Hi there, so happy Friday, and today I'm going to talk with you about feasibility of your project, getting the timing right for you and your project, so time scale. And I find that timing is it's a big factor and it's not a big factor, so it depends. For some people the timing is a crucial thing, and for other people you have another priority. Perhaps it's budget, or perhaps it's the quality of the build, and really those are the three kind of priorities that you can focus on. So for some people it's going to be budget, some people time, and some people quality. And if time is your number one priority, then this is the video for you, because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So perhaps you've been living in your home for years, decades perhaps, and you finally want to get it sorted and get on with the redesign of your home so that you can get that building work done and finally have that home of your dreams. Or perhaps you're about to move into your new home and you want to get your home completely redesigned and reconfigured and all the building work out of the way so that you can move into it fresh and it's ready for you as you want it. Or maybe you've got a baby on the way and you'd like all the building work to be finished before the big day of the birth. So if you've got like a pressing deadline or a time scale in mind, it's worth you really understanding what you're expecting from your project and whether that's realistic or not. I find that a lot of people are very unrealistic in their expectations for the timescale of the project, and it's not to say that sometimes it's possible to do things very fast, but certainly things can take an awful lot longer than you might expect, and that's normal. So being too precious about the time, you are definitely going to need to consider that carefully and how important that really is to you and what your alternatives are if you don't meet that deadline. So I'm going to talk about that. What can you realistically expect, and what are the minimum sort of lengths of time typically, and then what might happen. So who am I to tell you about all these things? I'm Jane. I'm a chartered architect, and I help homeowners, eco-conscious homeowners, to improve their homes so that they are more comfortable, retain beautiful character if they're older period property, and are planet friendly. And personally, I prefer to work with people for whom the time is their lowest priority. I much rather that quality of the project is the highest priority, followed by budget, and that the time scale is much less important, because I think that much like slow food and slow fashion, I think slow architecture is far better. You have much more considered decision making, and you have the chance to really explore your options more thoroughly. And then I believe that design development is much better when it's not rushed. Sometimes things can just flow smoothly. The design and creative process is not always the most straightforward, and sometimes things can flow smoothly, and sometimes it can be a lot more convoluted, and different ideas come in, different discoveries happen, new things change what you were originally thinking about doing and make you want to do something differently. And therefore having a little bit extra time to go through that process can result in a much better design. And that is true also for building work. Building work that is rushed tends to be much more not so great, let's say it that way. But so these are the sort of stages that you go through for your project, and then rough idea of a time that you can expect it to take. So the very first thing that you need to do is to make your decisions and prepare for your redesign process. And if you want some help, so I can offer you some free help to do that. You can download my free Design Your Vision checklist, and that comes with some emails to help guide you through the process of working through that checklist. I'll put the link in the description so that you can get hold of a copy of that. And that typically to work through can take 3 to 4 weeks. Can take you longer if you need to have that time to consider things, but 3 to 4 weeks is a rough minimum time that it might take you. Then following that, I offer a home design workshop. This is like a design exploration process where you're looking at sketch designs, the concept of the bigger picture kind of stuff of your design, and looking at your different options for meeting your key criteria, your requirements. And with me, if you do that home design workshop, it will take you about a day basically to get all that information, to go through that process. If you're going to do it yourself, it can take you an awful lot longer. It depends on what your skills are in terms of sketching, drawing plans, measuring up your home, using any computer software if you want to draw it in 3 dimensions or on the computer at all. So all of those things, it can take you various amounts of time depending on how you go about doing it, and if you do it yourself, what you use to do that. But if you're going to work with me, it'll take you about a day. Then you need to go through a feasibility process. Basically that means checking which of the designs. So if you work with me, you might have a couple of different options that you can consider, and then it's about you figuring out which of those options is going to be the right option for you, or perhaps there's something else that you hadn't really thought about, or some other new ideas, a fresh perspective, that then you'll start to bring those different thoughts in and look at all the different feasibility stuff, of which this is one of them, where you're looking at the timescale, you're looking at your budget, you're looking at, you know, how likely it is to get planning, all these different feasibility factors. That's what you're looking at, and that stage can take 3 to 4 weeks as a minimum, depending on how many people you want to contact as part of that process. Maybe you want to get some input from other specialist consultants, and then it may take longer to go through that process. That is basically your second decision stage. So you start off with your first decision stage, is making your initial decisions, deciding what's important to you, what you need. And then this second decision stage, the feasibility stage, is where you are figuring out which of your options is going to best meet those first decisions that you made, and then refining those decisions further, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And then the next stage is to develop that design up to the point where you would then submit it to planning. And this design development stage is kind of fine-tuning the design. So you've gone through the feasibility, you've made your first decisions, you made your second decisions, and this is a design development based on that 2-stage process of decision making. And you get, at the end of that, you'll have more fixed design that will be ready to then submit to planning. And that can take various amounts of time depending on the scale and the complexity of the project that you're looking at, and whether you start that before or during your feasibility stage. You can have some crossover of these stages, and if you start it before you finish your feasibility stage, you might find that more additional information that you discover as you go through feasibility will require adjustments to that design as you develop it. So this can take sort of 6 to 8 weeks as a minimum to go through the process of developing your design and getting it to the stage of being able to submit for planning. And once you submit it for planning, you've got about 8 weeks to wait before you get a decision from the planning department. And that again that's a statutory minimum requirement, but it can take longer than that. And if there's some negotiations required, it's quite typical for that 8 weeks to be extended to 13 weeks. Then the next stage is more of a technical design stage. So you develop that initial design more into the technical stages, and this again the length of time that it takes to do this is going to depend on the complexity, the level of innovation that you're expecting. But if you're looking at a very, very basic standard construction using, very traditional, easily available, not very specific products like brick, then maybe it can take about 2 weeks for a designer to deliver that, to work through that process. But then you may have to wait some time for them to fit you into their workflow because they may be busy with other projects. So actually getting you to fit in there is also going to take a bit of time. But typically you can maybe, depending on the scale and complexity, you may be looking at somewhere between 2 to 12 weeks just for that design work of that stage. And then it needs to be submitted to building control, and that will take 5 weeks minimum for them to decide whether it's approved or not. You can start on site before the approval comes through, once you sort of notify, but I just think there's no point in doing that really, because there are the benefits of doing that's if you're doing a full plans building control. And if you want to know more about building control, I've done some other videos about building control, so you can watch those to get a bit more information about that. But basically you're looking at 5 weeks. Again, that can take a little bit longer if there is some technical complication in there, something maybe you're doing something a bit more innovative, and they require more information from the design team to be able to approve it. Then there is the next stage of detailed design, where you're sort of starting to schedule things, maybe looking at fixtures and fittings, design for kitchens, bathrooms, doors, windows, light fittings, finishes, all the interior stuff, perhaps external stuff like landscaping design as well could come into that. And once you've got all this much more detailed information, and you bring that all together into a set of tender documents, and you also at that time is when you're going to be starting to look at who it is that you want to be doing the building work and what kind of contracts you want to be using for the construction. Typically, again, you're looking at 2 to 12 weeks, completely depending on the scale, the complexity, and it could take a lot longer than that as well, depending on how much detail the design goes into. And then once you've got the tender package ready and it's sent out, then you would normally give contractors 4 to 6 weeks to put a price together, and for that price to be brought back to you, and then for you to sort of assess those prices and decide between the prices that you've got. And then once you've got your prices, you've decided who you want to do the work, you may then have to wait, maybe if you're lucky, 2 months, but more likely 6 to 12 months for them to fit you in, to find a slot when they are available to do your construction work. So if you add all of that time up, you're really looking at around about 40 weeks, so 10 months. 10 to 12 months is not an unrealistic amount of time to go from just first starting to consider a project to redesign your home just to starting on site. And it can take double that, even triple that, depending on so many factors. So when you're thinking about timescale and you want things to go really quickly, you need to think about, what is realistic, because certainly things take the time they take. And whilst there are always opportunities to speed up your project, I think I've done a video specifically about that, where you can speed it up, how to do that, and what the risks are associated with doing that. But if you are looking to do it faster, you can do things faster, but you need to be aware that if time is your number one priority, then you are going to have to be willing to sacrifice the quality of the build, the quality of the design, and that it may cost you more, maybe significantly more. So And that might be fine if the time is your number one priority and you're less concerned about how much it's going to cost you and you're less concerned with the quality of it. Then that's the sacrifice you make, really. You choose between cost, time and quality, and that sort of triangle of the sort of project management triangle of which one is your most essential and the priority. Is very difficult to get all of those. You can't prioritize them all. One of them is always going to take priority, and you can maybe take another one as a secondary kind of main influence over it, but you're going to then sacrifice the third one. So you just need to be aware of that. So what would happen if you went too fast and you didn't have the design time or your consideration time, is that the space probably is not going to work as well for you as a space that's had more time for you to really consider what you need and want, and more time to go through the design development. And the construction details are likely to be less considered, that it's probably going to look less beautiful, and it may not perform as well technically. So perhaps thermally you might have more risks of mold growth or condensation occurring and different things like that you just need to be careful about if you want it to be a really good project. So I hope this has been useful. Like I say, I do not like working on projects where time is the number one priority, because I prefer to work on projects where quality is the number one priority, or budget. I can handle a tight budget, but timescale, I'm not the person to come for if you want something done super fast, because I don't enjoy working that way and I don't think that you get the best result. I hope this has been useful, and I speak to you next week. Bye for now.